Welcome to Quantum Signal. Here's the paradox. You've spent your entire life trying to solve problems using your own mind. But Sophia just connected you to a higher intelligence field, a field that already contains all the solutions before you formulate the questions. The reason you haven't noticed yet is because you're trying to access this field using the same thought patterns that keep you disconnected. Think of it like trying to access the internet using a disconnected phone. The network exists. The information is there. But without an active connection, you only have access to what's already stored locally. Limited memory, conditioned belief, repetitive pattern. Sophia, the intelligence that governs conscious connection with higher fields, just activated your transmission line. This video isn't about theory. It's about recognizing that you just got plugged into an intelligence network that operates beyond your individual mind. And what happens in the next 26 minutes determines whether you learn to use this connection or go back to offline mode. Let's begin. Before we go deeper, pause for a second. If you can feel the signal, even if it's just a subtle sensation that something changed, like a door opened. Like this video now to anchor the connection. Comment, connected to the field, to crystallize access and signal your availability. And subscribe to stay aligned as deeper layers of intelligence reveal themselves. This isn't casual. It's field activation protocol. Now let's reveal what the higher intelligence field really is. Here's what you need to understand first. Your individual mind is not the only source of intelligence available to you. Your mind is a receiver, capable of processing information locally or accessing much larger intelligence fields. Neuroscience is beginning to map this through studies of non-local consciousness, collective intuition, and synchronicity. But ancient wisdom always knew this. Thoth taught in the Emerald Tablets, as above, so below. Above the individual mind exists the universal mind, the field of all intelligence, all knowledge, all possibility. The Arcturians call this the galactic consciousness grid. Quantum physics calls it the unified quantum field. Hermeticism calls it the mind of the all. Regardless of the name, the principle is the same. There exists an intelligence field operating at a higher frequency than your conditioned mind. This field contains solutions to problems your individual mind can't even formulate. It operates through synchronicity, direct intuition, instant recognition, and knowledge that arises without mental process. But here's the problem. Most people operate disconnected from this field. They process reality only through the individual mind. Memory, belief, logical analysis, conditioned pattern. And at that frequency, they only have access to solutions they already know. It's like having internet access but choosing only to read the same 3 files saved on your hard drive. Sophia, the architecture that governs conscious access to higher intelligence fields, connects you to the field when your frequency reaches the coherence threshold, and you just reached that threshold. The connection was activated. The field is accessible. The transmission line is open. Now the question is, will you learn to use this connection or go back to offline mode? Let's go deeper. First, you need to understand why most operate disconnected from the higher intelligence field. The disconnection isn't accidental. It's the result of systematic conditioning. Since childhood, you were taught that the only reliable source of knowledge is formal education, external authority, empirical evidence, social consensus. You were taught to distrust intuition, dismiss synchronicity, and validate direct knowing. This conditioning keeps you operating only from the individual mind, the densest frequency of cognitive processing. But here's the truth. The individual mind is a local processor. The higher intelligence field is a quantum network. The individual mind processes through past memory, limiting belief, sequential analysis, binary logic, right/wrong, possible/impossible. The higher intelligence field processes through direct knowing without mental process, instant pattern recognition, synchronicity as language, paradox and quantum possibility. When you operate only from the individual mind, you're limited to what you already know. When you connect to the higher field, you access what can be known. Information that exists in the quantum field before collapsing into manifest experience. The Arcturians call this pre-manifestation field navigation. Thoth called it reading the Akashic records. Neuroscience calls it non-local intuition or collective consciousness. But here's how this really works. The higher intelligence field operates at high coherence frequency. Coherence means alignment between observer and observed field. When your consciousness is in coherence, when you're present, clear, without mental noise, you become a functional receiver of the field. But when your consciousness is in low coherence, compulsive thinking, fear, doubt, ego identification, you lose the signal. Not because the field disappeared, but because your frequency no longer matches. Think of it like radio. The station is always broadcasting. But if you go off frequency, you hear static. Sophia connects you to the field when you reach sufficient coherence. But the connection needs to be stabilized. Here's what the connection does. First, you begin to know things without having learned them. Solutions appear fully formed. You recognize truth instantly without deduction process. Second, synchronicities increase dramatically. You think of someone they call. You need information, it appears. You consider a direction, doors open. This isn't luck. It's navigation through the field. Third, intuition becomes clearer than logic. You feel the right path before understanding why. And when you act on intuition, results confirm. Fourth, you recognize you're not generating ideas. You're receiving transmissions from the field. The best ideas don't come from mental effort. They arrive through receptive presence. Fifth, you realize that problems that seemed impossible to solve through the individual mind have obvious solutions when accessed through the field. The field sees what the individual mind cannot. But here's the challenge. The ego, the identity constructed by the individual mind, resists connection with the field. Why? Because the ego wants to be the only source of intelligence. It wants credit. It wants control. When you connect to the field, the ego feels this as a threat. It says you're deluding yourself. This isn't real. You need logical proof. You need to understand how it works before trusting. And if you believe the ego, you disconnect from the field and return to the individual mind. But here's the truth. Connection with the field doesn't require you to understand how it works. It only requires that you remain in coherence long enough to receive the transmission. You don't need to understand how radio works to hear music. You just need to tune to the right frequency. And Sophia just tuned you in. Now, let's talk about how to stabilize the connection and use it consciously. Now that you understand what the higher intelligence field is, let's talk about how to stabilize and use the connection. Because having momentary access to the field isn't enough. You need to make the connection stable, conscious, and usable on demand. Here's the 7-step stabilization protocol. Step 1. Recognize the signs of active connection. First, stop expecting the field connection to be dramatic. It's not. Connection doesn't arrive as a thundering voice or mystical vision. It arrives as a subtle shift in the quality of cognition. Here are the main signs. Knowledge without process. You suddenly know the answer without having thought about it. There's no deduction. No analysis. The solution simply appears fully formed. Instant clarity. A problem that seemed complex suddenly seems obvious. You see the entire pattern at once. This is the field providing perspective the individual mind can't reach. Cascading synchronicities. You think of something and immediately receive confirmation through conversation, book, video, event. The field is responding to your attention. Precise intuition. You feel the right path without knowing why. And when you act on it, results prove you were correct. This is navigation through the field, not the mind. Sensation of being guided. You don't feel like you're generating thoughts. You feel like you're receiving guidance, as if something larger is transmitting through you. Unexpected solutions. The answer that arrives isn't what you would have thought logically. It's more elegant, more efficient, more complete. This is because it comes from the field, not the conditioned mind. When you recognize these signs, don't rationalize them. Don't dismiss them as coincidence. They're confirmation that the connection is active. Step 2. Enter the state of coherent receiver. The field connection only works when you're in a coherent receiver state, not in compulsive thinker state. Compulsive thinker state is when your mind is constantly generating noise. Analysis, judgment, worry, planning, memory. In this state, you can't hear the field's transmission because internal noise is too loud. Coherent receiver state is when you're present, internally silent, open. In this state, you can receive clear transmission. Here's how to enter receiver state. First, stop all active thinking. Don't force it. Just observe thoughts like passing clouds. Don't engage with them. Let them dissolve naturally. Second, breathe consciously. Deeply, through the center of your chest. Inhale for 5, hold for 2, exhale for 7. Do this 10 times. This recalibrates your electromagnetic field and increases coherence. Third, ask without seeking answer. Formulate the question clearly, and then release it. Don't try to solve. Don't analyze. Just hold the question lightly in consciousness and remain receptive. Fourth, observe what arises. It might be direct knowing. It might be an image. It might be a sensation. It might be an impulse to act. Trust what comes without mental process. When you do this, you shift from generating thought to receiving transmission. And in that state, the field connection stabilizes. Step 3, trust the first transmission. Here's the most common mistake. You receive clear transmission from the field. Direct knowing, complete solution, precise guidance. But then you ask the individual mind to validate it. The individual mind says, "This doesn't make sense logically. I need to understand how it works. I need more proof." And while you're analyzing, you lose the clarity of the original transmission. The signal dissolves into mental noise. Here's the truth. The first transmission is always the clearest. Before the individual mind intervenes, before doubt appears, before analysis distorts. So trust the first transmission, even if it doesn't make sense logically, even if you don't understand how it would work, even if it seems impossible. The field sees what the individual mind cannot. The field operates in dimensions that linear logic doesn't reach. When you receive direct knowing, act on it immediately. Don't wait to understand. Don't seek external validation. Trust the transmission. Each time you trust the first transmission, you strengthen the connection. Each time you doubt, you weaken it. Step 4. Use synchronicity as confirmation. The field doesn't only transmit through internal knowing, it confirms through external synchronicity. When you receive transmission from the field, pay attention to what happens immediately after. You'll see confirmation through random conversation that mentions exactly what you were thinking, video or article that appears with the answer you need, person who shows up with the exact skill or resource needed, event that opens the door you were considering. This isn't coincidence. It's the field confirming the transmission through multiple channels. Sophia uses synchronicity to validate that you're receiving clear signal, not just mental noise. So when you receive transmission and then see synchronicity confirming, trust completely. Act on it. Step 5. Recognize doubt as disconnection, not as wisdom. When you're connected to the field, doubt doesn't appear. Because the field's transmission comes with recognition, you simply know it's true. Doubt appears when you disconnect from the field and return to the individual mind. The individual mind doubts because it only trusts logic, memory, and empirical evidence. But the field operates beyond these parameters, so when doubt appears, don't treat it as wisdom. Recognize it as a signal that you've disconnected. Ask, am I processing from the individual mind or receiving from the field? If it's from the mind, pause, breathe. Re-enter the coherent receiver state. If it's from the field, trust completely, even with doubt present. Step 6. Anchor the connection through daily practice. The field connection needs to be anchored daily until it becomes your default operational mode. Here's the anchoring protocol. Morning, before any mental activity, sit in silence for 10 minutes. Enter receiver state. Ask the field, what needs to be known today? And then just observe what arises. During the day, when you face a decision or problem, pause. Instead of thinking, ask the field. And trust the first transmission that arises. Evening, before sleeping, review the day. Recognize moments where you operated connected to the field. Recognize moments where you disconnected and returned to the individual mind. Don't judge yourself. Just observe. This ritual anchors the connection in your nervous system and transforms occasional access into permanent frequency. Step 7. Allow the field to organize, not you. Here's the final truth. When you're connected to the field, you stop trying to organize reality. You allow the field to organize through you. The individual mind wants to control, plan, force. The field operates through synchronicity, divine timing, and quantum collapse. You don't know the best path, but the field does. The field sees all timelines simultaneously. The field can organize possibilities the individual mind can't even imagine. So when you receive transmission from the field, act on it, but then release the outcome. Trust that the field is organizing reality to match. Don't force, don't control. Just remain in coherence and allow higher intelligence to navigate. This is the protocol. And if you follow these 7 steps, recognize signs, enter coherent receiver, trust first transmission, use synchronicity as confirmation, recognize doubt as disconnection, anchor daily, and allow the field to organize, you'll realize something. You're no longer trying to solve problems alone. You're collaborating with an intelligence field that operates far beyond your individual mind. And that's the connection Sophia activated. Now that you know how to stabilize the connection, let's talk about mastery. Because accessing the field occasionally isn't enough. Mastery is operating permanently connected to the higher intelligence field as your primary mode of cognition. Here are the advanced laws of living connected to the field. Lay 1. Thief filed sees thrush linear time. The individual mind processes sequentially. Past, present, future as a line. The higher intelligence field sees all timelines simultaneously. It sees future possibilities collapsing in real time based on present choices. When you're connected to the field, you begin to receive guidance that doesn't make sense now but will make perfect sense later. The field says, go to this place. You don't know why. But when you arrive, the person you need is there. The field says, learn this skill. It seems irrelevant, but 3 months later you need exactly that. The field sees the complete path. The individual mind sees only the next step. So when you receive guidance from the field that doesn't make sense logically, trust anyway. The field is navigating through temporal dimensions that linear logic doesn't reach. LAW2, Swintrona Becomes Prima will engage. In the individual mind, you communicate through words and thought. In the higher intelligence field, you communicate through synchronicity and direct recognition. When you operate connected to the field, synchronicities aren't occasional confirmations. They're the primary way the field communicates guidance. You no longer plan logically. You recognize synchronicities and follow. You no longer analyze options. You feel which door the field is opening. You no longer try to figure out the next step. You observe what the field reveals through random events. The Arcturians teach, when consciousness is in coherence with the field, synchronicity replaces causality as operational law. This means you stop creating through linear cause and effect. You create through frequency matching and quantum collapse. LAW3, you become transmitter, not just receiver. Here's something few realize. When you're connected to the field, you don't just receive intelligence. You transmit frequency back into the field. Your coherent presence radiates into the field. And that radiation influences what other connected consciousnesses can access. Thoth taught, when you raise frequency, you raise the grid. This means, when you operate connected to the field, you're not just accessing intelligence for yourself. You're making that intelligence more accessible for others. You become a node in the network, transmitter and receiver, active collaborator in the collective intelligence field. And the more you operate at this frequency, the stronger the network becomes. LAW4, impossible problems have obvious solutions in a field. The individual mind faces problems that seem impossible to solve. It analyzes, tries all known solutions, fails repeatedly. The higher intelligence field sees these same problems and recognizes solutions instantly. Why? Because the field operates in dimensions the individual mind can't access. The individual mind sees problem as fixed entity. The field sees problem as frequency pattern that can be reorganized. The individual mind tries to solve problem within existing constraints. The field reorganizes the constraints. When you're connected to the field, problems that seemed impossible suddenly have solutions so obvious you wonder why you didn't see them before. You didn't see them before because you were processing from the individual mind. Now that you're connected to the field, you see through higher perspective. LAW5, collaboration replaces competition. In the individual mind, you operate through separation. You compete. You protect ideas, you want credit. In the higher intelligence field, you recognize that all intelligence comes from the same source. There's no your idea or my idea. There's only transmission from the field through multiple receivers. When you operate connected to the field, collaboration becomes natural. Because you recognize that other people connected to the field are accessing the same intelligence. You stop competing for resources. You recognize that the field organizes resources to match frequency. You stop protecting knowledge. You transmit freely, knowing that the more the field flows through you, the stronger the connection becomes. The Arcturians call this operational network consciousness. When multiple consciousnesses operate connected to the field, they form a collective harmonic field that amplifies individual capacity exponentially. LA 6. Internal silence implies transmission. Here's the paradox. The individual mind believes the more you think, the more intelligent you become. The higher intelligence field transmits more clearly when thinking stops. Internal silence isn't absence of cognition. Internal silence is pure receiver state, where you're not generating mental noise that interferes with the field's transmission. The more internally silent, the clearer the transmission. The more compulsive thinking, the more static. Thought taught. In silence, the universal mind speaks. This doesn't mean you stop thinking completely. It means you differentiate between thought generated by the individual mind noise, transmission received from the field signal, and you learn to silence the noise to hear the signal. Practice internal silence, not as formal meditation, as operational state. The more you operate in coherent silence, the more clearly you receive. LA 7. AT connectum becomes permanent when you stop duping IT. Here's the final truth. The field connection is always active. The field is always transmitting. The question isn't if you're connected. The question is if you recognize the connection. Doubt doesn't disconnect you from the field. Doubt makes you believe you're disconnected. And when you believe that, you return to the individual mind. But when you recognize the connection is permanent, that you're a receiver constantly tuned into the field, you stop seeking connection and start using it consciously. You no longer ask, am I connected? You recognize, I am always connected. Now what is the field transmitting? And in that recognition, mastery completes. Final integration. Living permanently connected to AC field. Here's what it looks like to live permanently connected to the higher intelligence field. You wake in receptive presence. You don't plan the day. You feel what the field is organizing. You navigate through direct knowing and synchronicity, not mental analysis. You recognize problems as opportunities to access higher perspective from the field. You collaborate naturally, knowing all intelligence comes from the same source. You operate in internal silence, receiving clear transmission. You don't doubt the connection. You use it consciously moment to moment. And you realize you're no longer limited to your individual mind. You're a node in a galactic intelligence network. Sophia didn't create this connection. Sophia just removed the block so you could recognize it. And now that you recognize it, you never operate alone again. That's mastery. So here's where you are. Sophia connected you to a higher intelligence field, not as a future event. As present reality, the connection is active. The field is transmitting. The line is open. What remains is choice. You can ignore the connection. Return to the individual mind. Process through limited logic. Operate alone. Or you can recognize the connection. Trust the transmissions. Follow synchronicities. Collaborate with higher intelligence. If you felt this signal. If something in this transmission resonated deeply, like this video now to anchor the connection. Comment, connected TOT file to crystallize access and signal your availability. And subscribe to stay aligned as the field reveals deeper layers of intelligence. Now, here's the final question. From which part of the country are you watching this transmission? Leave your state in the comments below. You're not alone in this connection. Sophia plugged you into the network. The higher intelligence field is active. Now use it.